Good morning. This is Talking Devils, the leading independent Manchester United podcast. I'm your host, Wayne Barton, joined by United legend Paul Parker to talk over the last couple of weeks at the club. First of all, obviously, excuse my throat. Obviously, I've got a little bit of a chest infection at the moment, just getting my way through that. If you're watching live on YouTube or Facebook, feel free to get your comments and questions in. If you're watching the replay, say hello. Feel free to comment. We do reply. If you're listening back on the audio podcast, please be sure to like and subscribe on the platform you're listening on. First of all, Paul, how are you doing? You all right? You have a good New Year's?
As good as possible, Wayne, really, I suppose. Christmas is a bit different. There's more inclusion with the grandchildren, which makes it hectic, and all of a sudden you're counting down the days till it's over.
That's it. The phrase um, "I'm old people now" gets into the into the vocabulary, doesn't it? It can have too much of a good thing, but not as far as United are concerned. As long as they're winning, it's always a good thing. I wanted to start on a couple of comments that you've made in the press because I read the comments. I'm like, oh, Paul's been talking, so I better get it from the horse's mouth. You made a couple of comments over Rashford and Maguire.
Mhm.
Uh, I'll get to Maguire a little bit later in the podcast, but we'll start with Marcus Rashford because obviously he's been playing really well. Long-time viewers and listeners will know your opinion on both of these, but we've only done one podcast since the World Cup, so I thought it's a good place to start. Now, he came out after the Everton game and he said he thinks it's the best form of his life. Certainly, when it comes to goal scoring, I think that's a fair shout. When you look at his contribution to the team, it seems a little bit more stable. But then again, it's 7 wins in a row, a few games in a row with a goal for Rashford. And I guess the argument is it good form? Is it a good purple patch? Is it the indication of something stronger? I read your comments. I know that in the past you've said he's scored goals this season, but not necessarily played well. I think it's fair to say he's played better in this period than he was at the start of the season. But is that the basis of where you were coming from? Is that you feel like he still needs to improve a little bit more to before we start talking about him being in great form?
Yeah, I think that's about it, really, Wayne. That's how I see it, because I just believe that people look at things and they just see goals and they won't move. They won't move. They just see goals. What he scored? He scored so and so, and he's got so many assists, and we've become very stat orientated. I think a lot of football fans have had stats pushed in their face rather than watching games. And maybe I'm quite critical because maybe the teams that I played in and the teams that I've watched over a number of years now, and when people talked about players there, when they haven't played well, they haven't scored goals, but they've given unbelievable performances. And I look at Marcus Rashford, and goals have got him off the hook. A goal has taken away 20 minutes, 25 minutes of horrendous stuff we're seeing, running into cul-de-sacs, thinking he can beat three players by running in straight lines and things like that. So I am quite critical, but I'm still a realist that understands that some of the goals he has scored have been quite important goals. There's a lot of them that have come at the back end of a win, later goals when the win's already there, but still he has still scored goals. I don't think you can ever take that away from him. But I still think there's still bits of his well, a few bits of his game that still need tidying up. If we want to talk about him playing really well and scoring goals, then I still think there's still a way to go, because even when you look at some of his games, and if people were to watch the game again and just put his goals aside and you look at exactly what he does, what he brings, then you might say to yourself, the goal has covered over a few cracks.
Yeah. No, I think that's a fair analysis of it, and I sort of knew that from what I was reading. Obviously, the headlines and the comments are one thing, but then I know your opinion on him, and it's not necessarily to do with his run of form. It's to do with that balance against the expectation of the club. And
And the fans as well, Wayne. By the way, because the fans, because he's a local boy, they push even harder for him They want him to do seriously well because he's a local boy. All clubs are the same with their local players, but Manchester United are the ones who are throwing up there more than most because of their reputation of young players and what is part of the foundation of the club. And I just want him just to get there and be there for the right reasons rather than goals disguising what have been some kind of lackluster performances, really.
But I mean, the flip side of that argument is, or the flip side of the conversation is, if he becomes a goal machine where he's scoring one goal every 1.5 games, say, so he's getting 30 to 35 goals a season, then they can mask the performances. And we're looking at so far Burnley, Wolves, Forest, Everton. I'm not disparaging Marcus's form at all. You just said there about local players and the fans wanting them to do well. I'm behind Marcus. I think his form is incredible at the moment. But the point of what you're making, that's where he needs to step up to, because it's all right saying he's a good run of form. And I think it's a part of a wider conversation about the likes of Dalot, Shaw, Martial, who's gone missing in a few games lately, that you say, all right, they've improved, but United's level of needing to improve isn't about getting into the top four anymore. It's about seriously challenging. And we all want Marcus to be part of a team that challenges, but obviously that level needs to improve for him to get there as well. And we'll see, because we've got some big games coming up. City, we're going to be seeing if it is form, if he goes disappearing, or if he steps up. I mean, if he steps up and he scores the only goal against City, the only goal against Arsenal, then we're having a different conversation in 2 weeks, aren't we? That's the point.
Well, Wayne, you won't be speaking to me, mate. I'd have to go and bury my head in the sand somewhere.
I will be. I will be. I'll drag you on to talk about it. But let me bring that on to the wider point about United's recent form then, because we are talking about Burnley, Forest, Wolves, Everton, and we've talked about good runs of form before. When you and I started doing this podcast, like almost exactly 4 years ago, Ollie was the caretaker manager. We had a run of wins, and we were like, this is good. The good feelings back at United, but we were never fully, not saying convinced, because I think that's unfair to Ollie, but it always felt like, show how long it can last. I know that you have some. Well, everyone's got the same concerns about this squad and how long it can last. But does it feel more like it's a stable team, a stable run of form than what we've seen in this last 6 or 7 years, or maybe even 10 years?
Sorry, that bit at the end there, Wayne, because you're croaky.
I said, the point is, do you think that this run of form, I guess post World Cup, or the few weeks before that, post City, really, do you feel like it's the most stable that we've seen the club? And I guess I'm going to say 6 years, but you can go back to Fergie as well.
It's it's the most in the sense of I'm looking at games now, and there's always that belief. There's more feeling now that United are going to get a result than what there's been for a long, long time, and it's about an all round rather than thinking if that player does this and if that player does that, there's a chance. When now I think you can look at it a little bit more collectively than what has been in a number of seasons. With any manager anyone cares to name after Sir Alex, I would say this is the clearest it's been. There's a better picture now than what there's ever been before. We don't know how long this can continue because I think it's almost out of the manager's hand now how far he can go. He now needs help. He's put down a decent foundation now, a really, really good foundation for where he wants to go and what he can do. Now he needs help to add a little bit more on top, and I don't know, hopefully they can go beyond the bungalow. But that's what it boils down to. The manager can't do more. Everyone can see what he's got there, and everyone knows the strengths and the weaknesses of everything there.
Yeah.
The starting 11. Everyone's got the opinion of a starting 11. The best starting 11 now would be a lot closer now than what it's been in a number of seasons because everyone was opinionated and because of certain players was grating on people. But everyone's got a good idea now, and you put 10 people from all over the country, supporters, into a room and you say, pick your starting 11, they wouldn't be far away now as what they were over a number of years now.
Yeah, there's like one or two players there you would say Shaw, Malacia couldn't contend, but you're going to pick Shaw at the moment. You're looking at the attacking options. Garnacho could come in, but likely you'll start with Anthony, Martial, and Rashford. So there are options, but it is right what you said. Ten Hag has remarked upon it as well. There's a small squad, and I guess a lot depends on what United can do in January. We'll talk about Weghorst in a moment, but B, whether or not they can all stay fit. That's going to be a big thing. And
Well, I think you find as well, Wayne, is that when, the run that United are on will encourage players to hang in there.
yeah,
That's the difference. When you're in the position there at the moment, you want to be around and you want to grab that adulation that's going this moment in time. You want to be among it when they're winning. So it's amazing how certain players will hang around, will be around, and maybe not feeling things as what they were feeling before. It's a great healer winning games, by the way. It's one of the best medicines in the game to
yeah.
be around a winning team.
Maybe I need to get down to Carrington then, man, get rid of my sore throat. Um, all right, so you also made a comment about Harry Maguire with the captaincy, and the headline went somewhere like relieve him of the captaincy now and put Bruno there. I did want to ask you about this because I mean I'm not opposed to the idea overall because I think the time's come for a change, but I just question the wisdom of doing it mid-season. Do you? I mean, I guess I'm asking your clarification on that. Are you
Yeah.
talking about when Maguire eventually goes, or do you think like the club should make a statement by saying, "Take it"? Oh, Bruno's the new captain.
It's, I mean, that's the thing. It's a headline, so I can't control the headline. My thing is that at the moment the manager seems to when Harry's not playing, he gives it. Bruno's the captain. He's on the field, so I don't 100% say that it should be Bruno. I don't think he's a captain of Manchester United. He just there's you need a little bit more than be than being seen as one of the better players to be a captain of Manchester United. You need more qualities than that. Um, but my way of looking at what's happening now is that he's not playing. He's he is not the we have to look at it not the second. He's not the first choice centre half.
Yeah.
He's not the second choice centre half because Luke Shaw's coming in on that left hand side. So it seems like he may be third choice centre half if we look at it. So if you understand where I'm going on that one,
No, absolutely no. I
yeah,
know what you mean
yeah,
with that.
yes. So what I'm kind of getting at is that every time he comes on the field, doesn't matter what minute it is, he's looking to get the armband back on. And I just think, and I think I've said this before, there was the situation with Robbo and Steve Bruce,
Yeah,
and Robbo wasn't playing because you could understand it. Roy Keane turned up, and it was Roy and Paul Ince in that midfield. There was a Brian McClare who was doing a good job as well when he come in and done it, and Robbo wasn't getting the minutes. So I'd imagine something they must have done it because they were such great mates. Is that Robbo's virtually just said, "When I come on the field, please stop giving me the armband. Don't give it to me. I'm not playing anymore. I'm always going to be that same person as Robbo is the words go club captain. He's still the focal point because he's still a player at Manchester United. He's still the person we look to, regardless. He's off the field, which is where he was just as important. We'd always still relate to Robbo. But on that field, Steve was what he was. He was a vice captain, but he was the one who was leading the team out. He was the one who was captain. So when he started a game as captain, he would finish the game regardless of Robbo coming on. There was no big thing. And a few times when Robbo come on, it was always given to him. But Robbo's gone, no, no, you're doing it. You carry on doing what you're doing.
yeah,
And I think it needs that now because I'm looking at it and I can see you see it, and always he's looking for that armband all the time. And I just think if you're going in a direction, the direction should be universal, and the players should know. The players know already. So why this kind of kidding everyone along that he's coming on and he's a captain because he's lost that edge now. That what was there isn't there anymore. And it's virtually taking him out of his misery, in my
yeah.
opinion.
It's a funny thing because I mean you're quite right with Robson. I remember stuff like that. You know, club captain doesn't necessarily mean team captain all of the time, and it happened in more recent years. I think Gary Neville was club captain and never didn't always take the armband when he was on the pitch. The reason why I asked about the possibility of making a statement now is I look at the manager Paul, and I look at all of the major decisions that he's taken. You know, I know a lot of people say the Pogba and Lingard things were already decided, but he was manager and he was in post at the time that they went. There were three big incidents with Ronaldo, the pre-season, Spurs, and the interview. Um, Garnacho and the indiscipline there, giving players chances to prove themselves with, Rashford, Martial, Shaw, the discipline with Rashford over Christmas where he took him out of the side. Every decision that he's making, all the big ones, he's getting spot on, but they're kind of situations that he's having to deal with rather than making himself. And I do wonder, and I guess this is the point I'm pointing to you is if he wants to do something like that, he's kind of creating that situation himself, and maybe he doesn't need to do that, considering that he's done so well with every major decision so far.
I agree. I totally agree with everything you said there, and I like the way he's going to handle things. He hasn't suddenly burst out the saloon, gun in each hand, and saying, "Right, I'm ready for action," and trying to
Yeah,
look for it. He's dealt with it as it's popped up in front of him. But I just think it's something, and maybe I'm talking about different characters now in the game compared to when I was playing. I think there was more maturity, more men who were playing football then and what there are now. And when you talk about Robbo and Steve Bruce, you're talking about maturity at their young age at that time, and they worked that out between them. Robbo was virtually saying, "You don't have to run across to me and make a point of giving it to me. Everyone knows." We
yeah,
all knew as players, even the majority of the fans still know now Robbo's status. Robbo runs onto the field now. Anything, even come on the field, people expect him to have an armband on but
yeah,
then they'll go, well, you don't need it because we know what
yeah,
you are anyway. It's as simple as that. So he just virtually said to his mate, don't give me the armband, and that's what it needs. I think
yeah,
that's what it needs. It doesn't need the big kerfuffle, and I'm noticing it. I'm seeing it every single time. I'm watching it.
yeah,
And I think three separate occasions just in the last 4 or 5 games, Harry Maguire's come onto the field, and every time you can see his eyes, he's looking, and he's not. First thing is go there, grab armband, go there, start my starting position, and you think to yourself, no, focus on coming on the sub and doing your job for the team.
yeah,
That armband doesn't make a difference. Your presence is the most important thing, one of the most important things on the football pitch. Your presence and persona are there as what you need to be on the football pitch. The rest of it is, will come along. But Robbo had a presence, and he didn't need an armband to prove a point.
yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, the other side of that is, and I do sometimes say this to you, Paul, is that your standard and Robbo's standard as a club captain is up there, and we're not there at the moment. And it's funny to see. Not funny because everything you've just said there, I haven't really picked that up with Maguire, but now you've mentioned it, I'm like, yeah, no, he does do that. It is running on and getting the armband, and it is one of those things. The other thing is, not that this is worthy of conversation, really, but it's just a point that I thought of, is that they'll. There are major disciplinary things that Ten Hag has dealt with, and he's done so well. And then you kind of don't want him to be making like other ones because then it becomes like he's having to make a disciplinary statement every month, and it seems like it's overkill. Like with Fergie, you could count them on. Well, in the early days, you'd count them. You need both hands every season, but as time went on, they were sparing, and there'd be big blowouts like Keane or Cantona. You know what I mean? There'd be a big blowout, and then you move on from it.
Yeah,
And
but
also,
but Wayne, there was always some the boss, over his time I was there, and his time before I was there, and the time after I was there. There was always things that went on, but we're in a different world now where players feel obliged that they've got to tell friends so they can get stories out there on social media. So that's where we are with on one thing. But on the other side of it, there wasn't a build up, a big. There was a notice board, but there wasn't a big thing up on rules.
Yeah,
You can't do this, you can't do that. You've got to be in before. You got to do that. We were young men, and we just had, and we were kind of understood the rules, and what you learned was from the rest of the players around you.
yeah,
If you're not sure of it, you become a little bit of a sheep, and you follow them when you turn up as a newbie, and you see what they do, and you just follow them along it, and you learn as you go, and that's how it was with Sir Alex in charge. You knew it. You didn't. There weren't big rule books and fines. There was fines going on all the time. Ones that mostly surpassed me, but it wasn't made into a big drama because it was part and parcel. People started making stories up about Marcus Rashford not, oh, the team's doing this, the team's doing that, and he's dropping him over something like that. It's ridiculous. He's been doing this, he's been doing that for us. We're going to miss him. United still won the game. Yes, he come on and he scored. Yes, he made a difference. But when you go and do it to a young player, doesn't matter. You have to do it, even if it's your best player or someone who's important at given time.
yeah,
You have to carry that on because there's a lot of because it isn't a one man team. I use the word it's a squad. There's a lot of players around, and
yeah,
if you start making rules for one but not for the others or the rest of them, whatever reason, then you cause yourself as a problem. So what he done there was right, and he would have done that to anybody. Now those players know they're not indestructible
yeah,
under previous regimes. They're not indestructible. Doesn't matter how big they think they are, given the current climate. Doesn't matter how big that climate in that climate, how big they are. But they're not going to get away with it, and he's made that already. And that something like that will happen again, but it won't happen as many times as when it was happening under previous managers.
yeah, absolutely. And that's a huge testament to the manager as well. We do
Mm.
have a comment here I did want to come to. Molman says, the team needs to improve. Rashford is carrying us in attack. Maybe if we add another attacker doing bits, like in Paul's day, his performances will improve. Well, we're not going to get an Eric Cantona or a Mark Hughes, but Paul, one name that has been linked quite closely, in fact, is Weghorst, the Dutch striker. He's on loan at Besiktas from Burnley, signed for Burnley at the start of last year. 6'6", obviously made an impact in the World Cup in that game against Argentina. At first, I was looking at it thinking that it's like Igalo, it's one of those, like short-term things, and there's nothing really that's changed my mind about that. But then I look at him, I think he does bring something different. There's height in there, there's presence, there's experience, and I don't think it's that bad a signing. The more that I think about it, maybe I'm just being still full of Christmas spirit, but I think it's not a bad signing. What do you think?
Maybe you're delirious from that dodgy throat you got. Um, I look at it and I think, like myself, I think everyone who's kind of thinking like you're thinking, okay, yeah, he made a difference in that World Cup against Argentina. He did make a difference. His presence unsettled them over that given time, and you could see he's got a little bit about him as well. He's got, typically Dutch. He's got good technical ability as well. But the everyone else, people who are negative are kind of going, oh bloody hell, he was at Burnley, and they're kind of going, well, he can't be that good at Burnley, and he couldn't even, they sent him out on loan. Well, maybe the players around him at Burnley and that in that level in the Championship, they weren't playing to his strength, and
Yeah,
his strength being 6'6" is a bit like maybe Peter Crouch's strength. Peter Crouch's strength at 6'20" wasn't the ball in the air 9 times out of 10. And
mm,
maybe it didn't suit him that having to play that way. Maybe his ego said going to say Rotherham or whoever's in that championship, that's not working for me. Does that
yeah,
make him a bad person? Maybe a little bit shallow, but I think as footballers, I think we all are in our own way when we've had a taste of the good life. But I look at it and you can't fault the manager and every player who's come in so far. So I think you've got to give him this little bit and say there's a method in the madness, what he's trying to do. He wants a focal point. If he's good enough for Van Gaal, he's saying to himself, maybe he's good enough for me. Someone obviously who he respects a lot. Van Gaal, I think, is involved in everything in Dutch football. Van Gaal used him, and he used him wisely. And maybe giving him Eric Ten Hag would do exactly the same. But the one thing that Manchester United are missing is a focal point. Somebody to play off, someone who you can look at and go, they're trying to use him.
Yeah.
They're trying to give him the ball and bounce off of him. Could he make a difference to, say, a Marcus Rashford on the right-hand side? Yes, of course he can. Without a doubt, there's somewhat to play into, somewhat to run off. Maybe if he's going to jump for a ball, you think to yourself, there's a chance he's going to win it, or he's going to affect the centre half. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a gamble and make an unselfish run in behind him and go for it. Now, if you have boots on the other foot, if that was Martial doing it, you'll go, no, he doesn't really want to jump because he's thinking I might get hurt here. So are you going to bother? Are you going to bother running? No, not really. So I can see where he's going. He wants a focal point. N'Golo, I felt sorry for N'Golo because he was brought into the club, and the club done him no justice at all. Wasn't used, wasn't given the opportunity, didn't make any sense. And today's game, you can afford to bring people in, pay them silly money, and not use them. Where before, under Sir Alex's regime, or during the people he is working for, he wasn't allowed to do that. He had to get rid of people to bring other people in. So he had to almost make sure, have to virtually guarantee, which you can't do, but that was going to work. Now you can do that. And if it doesn't work, you go and off you go. There's a pot you can't afford to lose, and there's a pot which you can lose. And I think he's in that second pot where he's taken a little bit of a punt and adding something different, which works within the budget that he's in.
Yeah. And the thing is, when you're looking at strikers, or you're looking at what's available, you really have to go for something that's distinctive, don't you? You have to go with something that's outside of the box, something that you don't have, and something that not many people have. And someone with that height and that kind of threat and presence, like you said, Martial, even against, I forgot what the game was, against just before Christmas, might be Forest. There was one of the games he just went completely missing. And it's like, you expect better from, you know what I mean? Especially against the standard of opponents that we were playing against. And that's the concern.
But that was, Wayne, that was the great thing about Sparky, you see. I mean, I always relate, Sparky was, one of the, when I was playing the middle, I always had to get up against Sparky all the time, play against him. It's between me and big Alan McDonald. Alan McDonald felt he could fight fire with fire, and that wasn't my way because Sparky was. If I did that one, I was always going to lose. But even if Sparky's having a bad game, and Sparky had some bad games for Manchester United, he's human. But you ask that centre forward, did he have an easy job? And that centre forward would just look at you, and it doesn't matter as much as they snarl at each other. That centre half would have so much respect for Sparky. Because he never stopped. He knew that he had him in his pocket, but Sparky was trying so hard to get out of his pocket. He didn't give in. When you look at Martial, the moment it doesn't go his way, he gives in. He doesn't keep trying. He doesn't make it difficult. So he doesn't say, well, I'm not going to get there. I'm going to try and make sure that clearance doesn't go as far as he wants it to go. I'm going to knock him slightly off balance just to see if I can get away with it to make something happen. He doesn't do it. And I just think that's what Ten Hag's looking for. Somebody who can give him something when things ain't going right for them or the team, make something out of nothing. Martial, you're looking for something out of nothing. You're looking for that unbelievable technical ability, that change of pace over those 2-3 yards, which he's got in abundance, but he doesn't use enough. And he's run out of patience with it now. He's had to let someone go, which caused him problems, which you maybe fingers crossed hoping he could get something from him. Didn't materialise, went away, and it went away as a bad smell in the end. He's had to put trust in Martial, which he knew believed it wasn't going to work, was hoping it was going to work. Every fan was hoping it was going to work, but after 5, 6, 7 years, I don't know how long he's been now, for 50 odd million, it's been poor. The poor return on an investment. So he's going down a different path, and I think he has to do it because if he doesn't bring someone in, he's going him and the club are going to get persecuted. I think the club first and him second. Everyone will say about João Felix. No, there must be something. I saw something on Twitter the other day. Um, Verhoog for Verhulst, I should say, for 6 months, or João Felix, and they're saying the money's the same. No, there's something. There must be something amiss there, or something wrong. Reason why he can't go for João Felix. There might be something. You need to guarantee that you're going to buy him, maybe, which he maybe at this time he mostly couldn't do it because of the payment structure or the way the club works. But there's a reason why he's going down it because João Felix, for me, you look at it as the way the club is, the way the club he fits the bill of being a Manchester United player
Yeah,
in
absolutely.
everything. But you look at the other side of it and you go, well, no, not on a long term basis. Well, it isn't long term. It's to get over a period of time, looking to get to
Yeah,
full spot, and that's having a focal point. Is he going to be fit for the remaining games? Well, there's more chance of him being fit than Martial. Martial, if things aren't going right for him, I think we have to say there's every chance that all of a sudden he's going to get an injury
yeah.
and he needs someone to go in. And obviously, there's nothing sitting underneath underneath the, say, 16, 17 players who's good enough to go and play centre forward for Manchester United.
Yeah, United don't have a great number there. They've got Charlie McNeil, who a lot of hopes are based on it. Him doing well in the future, but he's not around the squad at the moment. He's still cutting his teeth in the lower in the underage brackets. Brings me on to the game. We're playing Charlton tomorrow in the quarterfinal of the League Cup. They're in League One, so it's a game where theoretically, Ten Hag could rotate. He could even bring in Charlie McNeil into the squad if he wanted. Could even start him if he felt bold enough to do that. But then you've got the double-edged sword, and I know that we talk about it nearly every week. That it's a good conversation to have when we're playing well. United are on this good run. They're coming up to games where they're going to be playing City, now Palace, because that game's been rearranged, and then Arsenal. This would be a game you would say United will rest some players, but they've also got the momentum going and the good performances. So it's a double-edged sword. Do you take out 9 or 10 players, or do you make just 4 or 5 changes and then bring the better players off if the game's settled? What would you do with this game? Would you make the wholesale changes? Is this the one where you feel comfortable in doing that?
Um, after the weekend, and especially after yesterday, I wouldn't go with wholesale changes. I don't think there's a good enough squad to go and do that.
Yeah,
I really don't. And I think there's a lot of fans who would agree with me. You still keep a heartbeat there. You still keep a pulse there, without a shadow of a doubt. You keep that bit of momentum going. People, if someone was to go and get injured, they'll go, "Oh, he shouldn't have played in this plane." That could be any game. If we're going down that line,
yeah,
it's madness. At the end of the day, someone's going out to work, and all of a sudden, something happens. It's fair enough. Then you got to look at another alternative. But you can't just wrap someone up in cotton wool because you're saying, "Oh, we've got a more important game." Charlton's important for the club because they don't want to suffer the same embarrassment as what Aston Villa are going through this morning.
yeah,
So they can't afford to make wholesale changes. There is always a time. You look at it, things are going well at the moment to bring in young players, and I've said that. So I'm not going to go the other side of it and say, "Oh, we can't do it because of the run they're on." And Charlton, you can't take them lightly, given what's happened to Aston Villa, given what's happened to Newcastle, and all the other sides who had problems from the Premier League. If you're talking about making one major change and him coming in for Martial, I would go yes, because the players around him have still got that. We're unbeaten. We've got a good run. We're playing well collectively as a team. We know what we're doing. There's that belief. I think that's absolutely perfect. That's absolutely perfect. That is no different to what the boss would do on that time early on when those boys from '92 were coming through. But to go out and make a wholesale change just like this off the back of a good run, while still, as much as anything, the club is still, there's a great record, great run going, but still, it's still the ice is getting slightly thicker, but still, I wouldn't put my hand up and say, say it's done and dusted in that sense. So I would understand if he was to go and do that and keep everything else around and keep things going right. So the lad would go on that pitch and look at those players around him and go, wow, rather than put other players around him who haven't played, hardly played any games, haven't played any games, and all of a sudden you're all trying to knit together when it's a different level to knit together because you're not playing in whatever league they call it now, whatever it's called, the league underneath, wherever they've been playing in, and as well, you don't want certain players are coming in going, oh well, I'm only playing this because it's just a Mickey Mouse game against Charlton and FA Cup. I'm not even involved at the weekend. What am I doing here? It's a waste of time. Doesn't matter what I do. All the excuses going through pro's head at any given time.
Yeah.
Got to take it serious, Wayne, as far as I'm concerned, because the last thing you need now, it doesn't matter having a great run in the Premier League, the embarrassment of being knocked out of an FA Cup or fighting hard to get past Charlton is not the kind of thing that the club needs at this moment in time, or the squad needs at this moment, because they're on a good run, playing decent football, winning games in a good fashion. So don't want to lose that gut. Don't want to lose that momentum
Yeah.
because of that.
No, I absolutely agree, and I do think McNeil, he's a name that I chose because
Yeah,
he's the only real striker that you would see breaking through. But yeah, I think he's a long way off, and I say a long way off. He's some way off being included, so that I don't even think putting him in as a replacement for Martial and keeping the others. I don't think that would be feasible. You're probably looking at 4 or 5 changes using the squad, and then hopefully getting a 2 or 3 goal lead. Don't want to take it too much for granted, but getting that kind of lead and then bringing Casemiro off, bringing Varane off, wrapping them up in cotton wool for the weekend. So let's talk about that one. City looking a little bit ominous now. Yes, they drew against Everton, but it was so easy for them against Chelsea in the cup. United have improved, but this is you look at the players, and I think more than the players, and we just talked about the good run of the form and momentum. What do you think? Do you think that this is a big test for Ten Hag? Because I mean, you could argue that he was too anxious against City in the away game, and that's why we got battered. Do you think he's now going to be looking, especially being at home, looking at? We said before it wouldn't hurt him to look at tapes of what Ollie did. I know that the players are a bit different. They can defend a little bit higher on the pitch and everything like that. But it's a real test of Ten Hag to see how far he's come in the understanding of his squad since the last time we played City, isn't it?
well, it is, but you don't know at the moment which City you're going to get. Are you going to get a City against Everton or a City against City yesterday? And all of a sudden, if you're Pep Guardiola, you're very happy in the sense of you're going into a big game, on the back of a decent performance. One of their that's their best performance since this competition started again.
Yeah,
So it is, you know, I think United fans, they'd be a little bit kind of go, oh, just gone and scored 4. Could have maybe have scored more. Defended well, and they did it without Haaland playing, without their better players as such.
yeah,
With key players not sitting on the bench, not injured, sitting on the bench, and he didn't even have to panic to bring them on to chase the game. But I would say at the moment, this could come back and bite me. But you look at over the years, this is the best situation United have been in going to a game against City, because normally I'll be saying to you, well, you know, I'll be trying my best not to say that I can't see United winning.
last year when we played Liverpool and lost 5-0, and we had City as the next home game, and
Mm,
everyone expected exactly the same. So yeah,
yeah. So I mean that's the bit I don't want to go to, because I believe they're in the best shape they've been in to face City in a long, long time. And you can talk about what Ollie done against them, but that was just I wasn't. I mean, people will say, oh, that was great. That was tactic. What he done there was tactically great. What about the other games?
yeah,
Beating City. I mean, you expect the players to be up for that anyway. up for that game and give everything they've got, because what it means to Manchester, and you living in Manchester, and to be able to walk around Manchester, performance and a result.
Yeah,
But the other games that coming to your equation as well over a season. But this is one of them that I think is just it's even for me now, and how cynical I can be. I'm not really sure in this one, because the way United are at this moment, I look at them defensively. They're in a better shape now. You know, they've only got a World Cup winner to come back into the back four as well, which will make a difference without a doubt. Him and Varane together play very well. Um, you look at Luke Shaw, his form. Maybe over the last month and a half, is the last 6 weeks, or since we've come saying that over the season so far, Luke Shaw will be up there as player of the season. If we're looking at it as we do, we look at the last few games. We turn around and say, when he's been moved around, he
yeah,
hasn't, he hasn't faltered at all. Everything has been spot on what he's done. You can see he's playing with a kind of arrogance that he believes in his own ability as well. His whole persona is just on a major high. Everything, and I'm the one that was always with Luke Shaw. He's at his most vulnerable when he's playing well, because all of a sudden he gets in the comfort zone, and he
yeah,
hasn't done that yet, Wayne, has he? Everything has still been tip top. He's looking after himself, and that's why he is what he is at this moment in time. I think the club and the team are in a great shape going into the Derby game at the weekend. But there's still an obstacle in the way, and that's to get past Charlton. That's to
yeah,
get past them in the same fashion. In the
yeah.
same fashion they've been doing it with everyone else. Yes, it's scoring an early goal, and to make sure that they're right and deliver a performance that's Manchester United.
Yeah, a couple of comments in from Patrick. Says Happy New Year. Re, Happy New Year to you as well, Patrick. Hope you're well. He says Re selection for Charlton. It does seem we have a high volume of high intensity games now, with the Palace game being sandwiched between those. Absolutely. Would it make sense to manage Varane and Casemiro's minutes, given how important? I think we just went over that. Yeah, it would, but you've also, because they are important, you don't want to take them out at the same time, because it's so important, especially Casemiro, to the pace of the game. Patrick says, loving the Eric Ten Hag look I'm sporting in 2023. It's actually inspired by Paul. Don't tell him. I've gone for the Paul. Paul. And he says, not getting carried away, but I do detect some slight follows with City this season, just as Paul said earlier. Despite the beast they now have up front, they are beatable at Old Trafford with Eric Ten Hag's version of United. I do want to, before we close, then just a quick one, Paul, on that. Because people are talking about what to expect of United this season. And I guess that's the difference going into this game. Yes, in the past, we've looked at City and it's just been the City game and what that means. But now it's like it matters something to our own ambition. And I guess that what I want to ask is, what is that ambition for you now? Because a lot of people are trying to, they're trying to sort of mischievously put United in a title race, and a lot of people still saying top four. My concern is not so much that we're overachieving. I don't think that we are, and we should never think that. United should never be in a position where you're saying they're overachieving. But I do think it's fair to say we're ahead of schedule. We've got a definite identity. We're in a stronger run of form than we might have expected, especially considering the start of the season. We've got strong guidance. We've got a lot of players who were marginalised, who are responding well to the manager. You've just mentioned one show. Rashford's another one that we've talked about. Has that changed? Has it revised the ambition for this season? You're looking at the City and Arsenal games and thinking, well, if we win those or if we get good results in those, that we might be in a title race? Or do you think it's wise to just say, whoa, hold back a minute, it's still a top four place that we're looking at?
I would, let's put it this way: if they were to go and get results against City and against Arsenal, as much as you want to say, hold a minute, it's top four, it's like Arsenal position at the moment. Arsenal fans would love to, initially said, oh, hold on a minute. There's a loads, lot of, I've got them all round by me. Predominantly West Ham, Tottenham, and Arsenal. They are the three teams this area I live in. Um, all of a sudden they were saying, "Oh, but it don't be silly now. It's going to be City's title, top four. That's what he wants. We've got to finish with the top four Champions League next season. Arteta's done great. They're sitting at the top of the league, and there's a reason why they're sitting there with the deficits in the points between them and City and Newcastle. It's because they've been playing decent football and they've won games that they've deserved to win, and that's why it gives those Arsenal fans to talk about winning the title.
Yeah.
They're not just there by luck. They're not winning it on counter attacks. They're not coming back from 2-0 downs and winning 3-2. They're winning games comfortably in a good fashion.
Yeah.
The team are. I'm not sure about the way the manager's reacting to it. I think he's kind of he seems to he needs to control himself or it affect his players because if he's not disciplined on the touchline, he's going to lose the players on the pitch. So that's the only thing that's going against them on that side. So if United were to go and take 4 points out of those two games, I think you have to believe that there's an opportunity to go and achieve something. And everyone say with a squad this, it's not big enough and do well. 2 years ago, no one would have said that Arsenal would be looking like they are in this league at this moment in time.
Yeah.
It was impossible to say that. So things have changed slightly where you need millions and millions to go and put yourself in a position to win a league. Maybe if you only utilise a certain amount of players at any given time, they will stick together, want to play, and get unity and continuity to take you over the line. Maybe football, maybe going back a little bit, when you say maybe, to how it used to be,
Yeah.
rather than trying to choose from 30 odd players and keeping them all happy and losing momentum because you've got ring rusty players that you're having to play because one, they're miserable, two, they're affecting other players, and three, you need to appease the people who are paying someone 300 grand a week, but you don't fancy them because they've been thrown in your face by a director of football.
Yeah.
So maybe because Arsenal aren't using a lot of players at this moment in time and haven't used a lot of players at this moment in time.
Yeah.
So and I can't also I think we're gonna I haven't heard it yet, but the moment something goes wrong with Arsenal, guarantee a football fan will say, "Oh, but he's used the players all wrong. They played too many games. They're tired,"
Yeah.
which I know is a load of rubbish, absolute rubbish. But it's a good excuse to use because you can pump that around. And it gets in people's heads. So I think if you take 4 points over those two fixtures, I think that if they get into that top four, playing the way they are playing, I really think there's a good battle on, and United are fighting to win the league.
Yeah. It's going back 6 years, but Leicester are also a good point to that. That you could name 14 or 15 players that was in their main squad, and then you'd be struggling after that. So it does
Yeah,
show the value of a good nucleus in that side, and
100%.
United have definitely got that at the moment. We mentioned it earlier in the pod. Yeah, it will be interesting to cover those next couple of podcasts. Anyway, I know Paul said that it might be difficult for me to drag him back on, but if we get good results, I'm sure it'll be a bit easier to do that. And to be fair, in past seasons, I've not really looked forward to the big game podcasts because of the trepidation that comes with what the results would be like. But yeah, I'm actually looking forward to seeing what Ten Hag can do, knowing that he's going to be taking responsibility for that in a way. And you've got a lot of players who now seem to be taking positive accountability, and yes, Maguire running onto the pitch and getting an armband bit, Varane, Martinez, Casemiro, you've definitely got players in there who want the ball. They want the ball and they want to play with it rather than just break it away. So they're definitely going to be an interesting one, to say the least. Thanks everyone for sticking with the podcast and watching and listening. If you've enjoyed it, please like and subscribe on YouTube and get your comments in after on the replay as well, because we do still comment on the replies that we get. And if you're listening back on the audio podcast, please be sure to give us a review and subscribe on the platform you're listening on. We'll be back next week to talk about that game against City and Charlton. Until then, stay safe and stay well. Thanks for watching and listening.